that?
You didn't hear that from them.
They are not currently written on the book. They are going to have this. They have their body cam.
We'll talk later. Morning, Shane.
Loud, huh? These people. I think he may have gotten this, but I'm gonna make sure he gets it.
Gentlemen, are you ready?
Ready.
Shane, you good?
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, as we gather this evening, this council asks for strength, courage, and wisdom. And we ask for compassion and caring for the crazy events that are going on around this world. Please keep our troops safe. Let's make sure we make wise decisions on it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Call to order the March 1st meeting of the Mooresville Town Council. We're going to do these minutes one at a time. If gentlemen have had an opportunity to read the minutes from our February 15th meeting, I need a motion to either approve or amend.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, February 15th, with the following addition. On page 3, I think it was whitewashed a little bit in the area where it talks about year-end APV register reconciliation was created to capture inadvertently omitted claims from the town council meeting dockets. I think it should include the amount of $612,086.17. So I'd make the motion to approve it with that addition.
So, I mean, I think it should be a motion to amend the minutes.
Okay, a motion to amend with that addition.
And you want to add the dollar amount, is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, of the register itself.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Seconded, all in favor? Aye.
I was an aye.
And then now I'll take a motion to pass as amended.
So you need a second motion?
To pass as amended.
Okay, so we amended, now we'll make a motion, I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Motion has been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Need to approve the minutes from our executive session. Had a chance to read those. Need a motion to either approve or amend.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from executive session, February 24.
Motion been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain.
Abstain.
Greg, 301. Before we start in, Jeff Cook could not be here this evening, and it killed him that he couldn't be here. It's work and work related, and he wanted to be here but could not do it. He did send a letter and ask that I read it. I am going to omit agenda, where he comments on agenda item A, as on our agenda, discussion of town manager has been withdrawn at this time. And I would rather Jeff, if he's going to make comments, I'd rather him, if we're not going to discuss it tonight, his comments can be made in person. He used a lot of big words. Let me get a drink of water here. From this point on, I'm quoting his letter. I would first like to start out by apologizing for missing this meeting with very important agenda items. My job has me working during the hours of this meeting, and there was no way to get around that. With that being said, I will keep this brief, but wanted this letter read to address some items. I understand this is not a vote due to my absence, but merely a statement of my beliefs on the agenda items. Again, I'm omitting his Part A. Agenda item B, regarding the year-end APV reconciliation. I'm well aware that this is a black eye for our clerk's office and our board. I would support an audit to be conducted by the State Board of Accounts to ensure this does not happen again. Agenda item E, in regards to the board appointments, I have made it clear on previous meetings that we as a board should follow our own rules. I've reached out to all parties involved and reassured them that this will not happen again. I have endorsed a letter prepared by our attorney in favor of removing the 2 council appointments to the redevelopment board and following our own rules moving forward. Sincerely, Jeff Cook, Mooresville Town Council. He wanted to make sure that I reiterated that he did want to be here, and he apologizes. On to unfinished business, again, the discussion for town manager has been withdrawn for this meeting. The reason that it was withdrawn is we are working on a capital improvement plan and possibly finding out how we can free up monies from other sources. Shane and I had the privilege of meeting with Baker Tilly to see how that is progressing this Friday.
Yeah, March 4th, yep. Isn't it March 4th? Yep.
hopefully as that progresses, we'll see if money becomes available to use for that type of program, should we choose to do it. Item B, discussion of year-end APV reconciliation.
Hello. The past few weeks, rough due to accusations on social media, emails, and text messages. I want to be on record and transparent to the citizens of Mooresville tonight that I will not debate the town council's meeting or agenda topics on social media platforms. I understand attending town council meetings are difficult for some people because of their busy schedule. But we have other convenience options for our citizens. They can go to the YouTube and watch it live of the night of the meeting, or they can go onto our website the next business day, and it'll be populated under meetings. Also, my staff has been feel like they've been attacked, and which really disturbs me. My staff includes 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee with 43 years of total service after adding my 13 years, which brings the total to 56 years of experience and knowledge in the clerk treasurer's office. Continuing ed is constantly being sought to ensure this office is abreast of all aspects of roles and responsibilities. Deputy Clerk Debbie and I attend monthly State Board of Accounts required training meetings and the biannual conference for Indiana League of Municipal Clerks. All staff members attend software training, payroll, asset management, accounts payable, and utility billing. There was an AP voucher docket that was provided by me on the February 15th meeting. And the council voted to table that for that night to tonight for more in-depth details. We caught the error and we put something in place to fix it so we can get a baseline going forward. This time I want to call Deputy Clerk Debbie Montz to speak tonight. Her job title consists of reconciliation, budgetary clerk, and payroll clerk. Wears a lot of hats, people. She wears a lot of hats. Not talking about people coming in and wanting to extrapolate knowledge from her. Also in the audience is my accounts payable clerk, Tammy Van Hook. And after Debbie Montz speaks, you will hear from the town's financial advisor, Paige Sansom, with Baker Tilly on this topic.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. The last meeting, we presented a year-end docket and questions were raised, understandably. I apologize I wasn't able to be here that night. Probably would have been helpful had I been able to be here, but I wasn't, so I'm here tonight. Hopefully we can clear up some misconceptions and answer any questions that you still have. So first I want to explain why this happened, and then I'll get to the how it happened. I've been employed in the clerk's office of the town of Mooresville a little over 23 years, and in that time I've been through a lot of audits. The town is audited for every year, but because of staffing issues with the state, they sometimes only happen every other year now. Audits are always evolving. They've changed a lot over the years. What they ask for has changed. What they're looking for has changed. I think some of that is by design. I mean, it makes sense. They're not going to be predictable. I asked my son, who is a CPA and is actually an auditor himself, not for the state, but he audits public companies. I said, that's something they teach you in the Kelly School of Business, is to always change it up so that, you keep everybody guessing. And I mean, I was being sincere, and he said, yeah, I mean, it kind of is. I mean, there's your standard questions, but then obviously there's some other things. You don't want to be overly predictable. So because audits are always changing, we never stop learning, and we never stop tweaking our processes to keep up with them. There's some things that we do now a certain way because an auditor 10 years ago wanted it done that way, and you may have another auditor come in and say, why do you do it like this? Well, because, once upon a time you asked us to. And until somebody says something different, we keep doing it. You never get the same auditor. I don't know that we've never had the same one twice, but I'm pretty sure you never get the same one 2 years in a row. All of that, makes perfect sense. So our last audit was in 2020 for the years 2018 and 2019. At the end of the audit, you always have an exit conference. The council's invited, the clerk treasurer. I'm usually there, and there's usually your field examiner and then their supervisor. We had a conversation at that conference about some things that they were not able to find on the docket. So one of the things that's kind of new that I've never noticed them doing before is they'll pick just a voucher number at random, and then they will check it to see that it appeared on the docket. The things that we asked for some clarification on that, because some of the things we knew weren't on there. Things like every month we transfer money from sewer operating to another fund to make a bond payment. And then we make that bond payment, and that money goes to the Bank of New York. And then the Bank of New York turns around at some point, I think twice a year, or it depends on how it's set up, and pays the debt servicer. So our question was, do you really want that on there 3 times? Because doesn't that inflate the docket and make it look like we're spending more money than we are? The auditor, the field examiner, said, well, I still think they should be on there. Her supervisor said, kind of makes sense what she's saying. It would inflate the docket. Do we want them on there 3 times? And the auditor said, yeah, I think we do. So it doesn't really make sense to me, but I don't make the rules. So that's what they want. So that took place in late 2020 by the time we had that. So now we get to how this happened. So we started out 2021 trying to make some changes to make sure, because at that point, 2020 was pretty much done. We got together, the docket and the entering of the claims are creating the docket and entering the claims are 2 totally separate processes. I usually enter all the EFTs, the payroll transactions, the perf transactions, and then I do the monthly reconciling. So I enter the transfer to make the bond payment. Excuse me, I forgot to put my water up here. So since I'm not the one that creates the dockets, because Tammy does that after she enters the claims for the meetings, I guess I didn't have a clear understanding of how they're created. I thought I did, but there was obviously some lack of communication there. On the first page of the handout, of the small handout that I gave you, this is a screenshot of the page where you create our dockets. And there's several different ways of going about it and pulling in the information that you want to be on the docket. I, for some reason, thought that she created it by a PV date, when in fact, she creates it by due date. So the due date, when you enter a claim, when I enter an EFT, I should be entering, if you look at the second page, I should be entering the due date, regardless of the day I pay it, I should enter the due date as the date of the next meeting, so that when she goes to create the docket for that meeting, it'll pull that in. And I, for some reason, had in my mind that it was the date allowed. So if you look at that second page, like you'll see that the date allowed is March 2nd. Well, that was a council meeting last year. But the due date, because this particular transaction is something that I do during monthly reconciliation, the due date was entered as January 31st, which is the date that we put in for all the reconciliation type things. So when she created the docket using the due date, it didn't pull it in. So it took a couple months for us to kind of figure out that that was happening. And when I finally realized I was putting in the wrong date, I started using the meeting dates. And I think that things, for the most part, were going pretty well. So we got to the year-end process, and during the year-end process, one of the very last things on the checklist is to print a year-end check register. And when I got to that, I kind of started, poking around in there a little more. And I thought, thinking back to that audit, I thought, I wonder what would happen if I put in January 1st to December 31st. So I tried it, because you can always delete them. So I thought, I'm going to see what this does. Well, it brought in everything. And by everything, I mean, if we made a correction in the system, if we paid a water bill, the police water bill out of sewer and not water. And, I'm picking on Kevin, I guess, and then Kevin didn't catch it when he signed his claims. But he comes back 2 months later and says, hey, why is my, water bill or sewer bill, whatever, overspent, or, something like that. Brings in a mistake to our attention. That's already been on a claim. You've already approved the payment. We just need to change the appropriation. Same budget, not a big deal. And we can make those changes in our system, but when I put in January 1 to 12/31, it brought in any change we had ever made. It brought in, if a check gets lost in the mail and we have to correct or replace it, it brought in the second check. Anything that had never appeared on a docket, it brought it in. It brought in payroll deductions, which that's not your money, that belongs to the employees, so those don't need to be on your docket for approval, but it brought them in. If you just put in the date, that's what you're gonna get. So we went through that docket that it created and deleted off of there everything that we found had already been on a previous docket. But we were trying to make sure that when they come to do our audit next year, it was just a conversation that we had. It wasn't a write-up, it wasn't an official comment on the audit. So, usually the way that works is the first time they find something they don't really like, they'll tell you, you'll have a conversation about it, but then you've been made aware of it, so, you can't plead ignorance after that. So, looking forward to the next audit, we wanted to make sure that they're not going to be able to identify a voucher that is not on a docket. So, we went through it, we left some things on there. It is a large number. And now, if you want to go to the second handout, I kind of want to go over that with you. This is essentially still the docket. The only thing I did was print it into an Excel format so that we could sort it and do some subtotaling and, maybe make it a little easier to read and understand. So the first section, those are all payments that were made by the Bank of New York. So just like I was saying, we transfer money from one fund into another fund. That's on the docket once. We pay it out of that other fund. That hits the docket twice. The Bank of New York turns around and pays it out again, hits the docket a third time. And you can see that by that first transaction of $15,769. It appears up there in the first section for Bank of New York. It appears in the second section for the loan payment, and it appears in the third section, which is the transfer. So the first three transactions are all Bank of New York payments that they paid to the shareholders, or however that works. I'm not a marketing guy. I can't really explain all that, but so you can see that those total $314,208.07. And I probably should also point out, I don't know if I said this, but I didn't remove anything from this docket. I wanted the final total to be the same, whether we think things should be on there or not, because I want you to see where everything on here came from. So that's half of it right there. Bank of New York transactions that back in the day, we didn't even reconcile those statements because we already reconciled those transactions through our books, and we weren't entering them in our system because those are kind of Bank of New York transactions. But somewhere along the line, the auditor said, no, we want you to reconcile their statements also, which means we have to enter those transactions in our software so we can reconcile their bank statement. So that's the first part. The second part, like I already pointed out, is the actual bond payment of $15,769. The next section is all transfers. And some of those are, the transfers to make the bond payment. Some of them are, we get money through a grant for Operation Pullover when the officers, they have I forget what they call it, but where they pull over more people or they look for specific drunk drivers or whatever, and they turn in their overtime for that, and we are reimbursed for that. So that money has to go into its own fund since it's a grant, but it's there to reimburse their overtime, so it eventually gets put back into the general fund. So that whole next section is just transfers from one fund to another, so they're not really expenses. Where it says debit, credit, offset, that is a process in our billing system where we bill sewer and wastewater on the same bill, sewer and stormwater, sorry. The system has a certain way that it applies those payments, but after every billing cycle, you still sometimes have credits in one utility and a Deb in the other. And so that's a monthly process that we run where it evens that out. And we actually do a expense out of, it's always, wastewater always has more. So we do an expense out of wastewater and a receipt into stormwater to kind of offset that. So that's a monthly reconciliation procedure. It's just moving money around. It's not really an expense. So those come to $116,000. The next whole page, half a page, whole page, and almost half a page again are perf payments. And those are, perf payments have to be done every payroll period now, and they have to be done by EFT. So we submit a file to perf and 77 pension. 77 pension is police and fire perf. Every payday we submit a file to them, and they draft the money out of our bank account. I enter those in the system, and I was using the pay date as the due date. So there again, that, I mean, I made a mistake. I mean, I was using the wrong date. Figured that out somewhere around March or April, I guess March. I don't honestly know what happened in November. I must have reverted back to my old ways because they showed up on there again. And then the December transactions, I enter those as I'm doing the bank reconciliation. So the meeting in December had already happened when those got entered. And the real purpose of a year-end check register, in a normal year, you should mostly only be seeing transactions that happened between the last meeting in December and got paid by the end of the year because we couldn't hold them for whatever reason. And hopefully going forward, that's how it will be. But, so these December transactions, that's what happened there. We found out some December transactions, we put them, those ones we paid after the last meeting, we put the due date in as January 4th, our first meeting in 2022, and then realized that the software doesn't recognize that and doesn't pull them on. So if they were not on this one, they wouldn't be on one. So that's $149,000 of perf payments, which, I mean, we have to pay the perf. It's on the salary ordinance. I don't think anybody here wants to not fund the pension for the employees. The next section is credit card fees. That is also a monthly reconciliation process. Those fees, we charge every customer $3 to make a credit card payment. And we only take them for sewer bills, building permits, and sewer permits. So those fees are ultimately offset by user fees, but they still appear as an expense on our books. So that's just under $11,000. The next column is a return check. That's probably one I could have taken off, but I didn't. I left it there. It was an NSF check that was returned from the bank, and so, we've already credited somebody's account, and we have to reverse that, so that's an expense. The very last section, $5,670.94, is the section that is truly, well, I should have probably taken out the Menards bill. This is the only section that is truly where we just messed up. We put in wrong due dates or wrong meeting dates. It was an entry error. I gave you some screenshots of some of these just to see that some due dates were entered that weren't a meeting date, or just various entry errors. And you're going to have those. I mean, we're human, we make mistakes. So at least we have this process where, we can identify those mistakes things that were entered wrong and overlooked, and we can make sure that we get them on the docket. We had a couple where there was a check printed where the due date was actually entered correctly, but the check, for whatever reason, and Tammy and I racked our brains and cannot really think of why this would have happened, but for some reason the check was printed after the due date. And so, I mean, even though the due date was right and it was the meeting date, evidently because we hadn't printed the check yet when that docket was created, it didn't put it on there. So that's where that figure comes from. I did go ahead and move everything that was in, that had a December date that, you know, legitimately should have been on this docket. I moved those down and totaled them separately on the last page, and those come to $75,795.50. So, you know, that's basically it. If you have any other, I guess I was going to mention that going forward, we got together today. We kind of poked around in the system. We created a couple different dockets and tried different ways of running them to make sure that we would capture anything up to this point that had been missed. We only found one thing. It was a Wex bill, and Wex is our fuel cards for our first responders and our street department, and they will shut them off. We found that out the hard way. So we never play with those and try to think that we can hold them and not pay them, or we'll have big problems. So we figured that we will change our process, the way we create our dockets, and we will run this process periodically, every meeting if we need to, and just make sure that we've caught everything so it doesn't all happen at the end of the year next time. I just didn't really know that this was something we could even do, but now we know, so we'll make sure that we do it more often and stay on top of it. So I guess if you have any other questions, try to answer them.
I have quite a few questions you might expect. I'm the bully on social media. I wanted to alert the public when I saw this hit my packet, especially when we asked the clerk treasurer last meeting for an explanation of what it was, and she couldn't tell us. So the docket came in there without explanation, without a heads up. You say it's new as far as the APB register. It has multiple transactions going back over a year. Why didn't the clerk's office? She said she put it in, so it may not even be a question for you. Why wasn't the clerk's office prepared to give an explanation? It looked to me, quite frankly, like it was put into our docket hoping we'd approve it and slip it past us.
Well,
that's what it looked like to me.
I do this. That's why I'm the one explaining it tonight. This is the majority. I do the year-end process. I don't create the dockets, but I created this one.
Okay.
And I tried to give Diane the Reader's Digest version of it, but as you can see, it's a pretty complicated explanation here. So, you know, she hasn't ever done this piece of it. She's not been in office a long time and had a chance to sit down and learn every aspect of the job. So I couldn't possibly explain to her in, you know, a couple minutes in a way that she could turn around and explain it to you all. And I just wasn't able to be here.
Okay.
So.
When we got the docket, most dockets come in like this. They have receipts attached to them. I realize that a lot of this docket was transfers and so forth, bond payments. But why wasn't the docket presented with the supporting documentation to us, like every other docket has been?
Well, I guess it could have been, and it still can be, but we'll have to go back and pull all these. I mean, that's something we can do.
Okay. You mentioned quite a bit about the process and entering figures and this and that. Has the software you have changed in the last couple of years? Like, is it, I mean, because when I hear you talking about bond payments, the town's been paying bond payments for a very long time. Has that process changed?
It's just not something that the auditors have ever, I explained why we didn't feel like they should always be
Right.
on the docket.
Right.
It still doesn't make sense to me, but it was never something that was brought up in the past. So, they want us to put them on there, we're gonna put them on there. So, I mean,
The idea that transactions for the period ending the month, so basically for the period between meetings, the last meeting of one month to the first meeting of the next month, those transactions are often put on the docket following. So has that process changed any?
no, that's why we normally, and now, we know that the due date, that if I do an EFT at the end of the month, of 1 month, and you've already had your meeting, and your next meeting is, like, I paid a bond payment a couple days at the end of last week that was due March 1st. But I entered it with the date that the bond payment was made, which I think was the 28th, was the date the EFT became effective. But the due date was entered as March 1st, so that when this docket was created, it would pull it in.
So the software hasn't changed. Has this problem been going on for the last however long you've been doing this?
Well, all I can tell you is we've been audited up to and including 2019,
Yep.
and we've never been written up for it. So
Are you sure?
I can't, What?
Are you sure?
Not that I'm aware of.
In the management letter they gave me, they mentioned the problem.
I don't think that's public record. I think it says in the management letter that it's for management purposes only, so I wasn't sure I could discuss that. You might want to double check that. You're talking about the letter at the exit audit?
It's confidential, you cannot discuss that.
I mean, I've told you basically about the conversation without going into the details of the letter. That was not a write-up in the last audit. I mean, you said yourself the only thing we had was that there was 2 initials missing.
Yeah, and I was wrong about that, because there's more items in that letter. I've got a copy of it here, but evidently I can't share it.
I think you have to be, I think the reason that's confidential, correct me if I'm wrong.
It is confidential.
It's confidential because it's not a finding yet.
Right, correct.
So, I find that the auditors are very reasonable people, and they understand we're human and we make mistakes. We are not CPAs. If you had to be a CPA to do this job, nobody would do it, not for what we get paid. So, and trust me, I'm happy with what I get paid. I'm just telling you, you wouldn't find a CPA that would do it. So, I think they're reasonable and they understand. It's always a learning process. I have never stopped learning in 23 years. And so you tell them, okay, just like I said, I explained why they weren't on there, or, because to me it just didn't make sense. They don't agree, but they understand, and that's why usually the first time anything comes up in an audit, it is not a finding. It's just a note or a comment, so that you have a chance to have corrective action.
So the $612,086.17 though. A minute ago, you said something about 5,000 being the real screw up. But the state board wants to see all that money on a docket, correct?
Yeah, that's why it's on there now,
Okay.
so that we can show them it's on this docket. We went back and created this docket and presented it to the council. You can approve it or you don't have to, but we want to be able to show it was presented, so.
Was this self-reported to the SBOA, this issue? Did you ask them for help, or when you found it, did anybody from the clerk's office do that?
Always, just as long as we go to the next audit and show that we did our due diligence in correcting issues that we found, they've never been hard on us for it. I mean, they always seem to be very understanding, and I just assumed that we could show that we caught it, we took corrective action, and I feel like they'll be satisfied with that. If they're not, then I guess it'll be a comment on the next audit.
I think when the clerk's office pays something without it being on a docket, it kind of takes away the check and balance of this council, because we're supposed to be approving these items before they're paid, or a very small statutory set of circumstances like the bonds. You can pay them, but then they should appear shortly after that on another, maybe the next docket. So in my view, our role was kind of subverted or whatever. I'm not saying it wasn't by accident, but I think if you had, I'm not blaming just you, I'm saying the treasurer's office had seen this and said, well, surely at least one member of the council is going to have questions about this. I would think you'd been prepared, kind of like you are tonight, to before you present it. None of us forced anybody to put that into the agenda when it happened. You could have waited
Which
till
shows that
today.
we were very transparent and not trying to hide anything by presenting it, having it be an agenda item. And the reason I had her go ahead and put it in there is you were doing the transfers, the auto transfers, year-end transfers. And so it just kind of fell in line with all of the year-end housekeeping items, so I just put it in there. I mean, I was part of the year-end process. I just closed out the year, literally the day of the last meeting, because quite honestly, I felt like I was being pushed to get that done, because I kept being told that people were requesting up-to-date fund reports and up-to-date appropriation reports, and I can't give you those until the year is rolled over. And I think I rolled it over sooner than I have in the past, because I wanted her to be able to bring up-to-date reports to the last meeting. So we were just trying to get it over and get it behind us so we could start working on our annual report that was due yesterday, that we submitted at 10:18 last night, because we basically had 2 weeks to do it. So, I already said I apologize I wasn't here. I had another commitment, and I don't know that I didn't expect there to be questions. I'm not sure I expected it to blow up like it has, and I guess that's my mistake. I should have seen that coming.
Yeah, especially with me here. You know that. So I have submitted I did report it to the SBOA because I felt like it needs to be looked at. I'm not super confident the problem's fixed. We'll see. Because I really don't see what happened in the last 2 years or however long you've been doing this that changed the process to where, unless they required you to start putting all of these items, every one of these items on a docket, and they didn't before. But every docket I've ever seen has payroll, it has all this stuff on it, so.
These are not the actual payroll transactions.
Right.
These are perf payments. The payroll transactions,
But they're
that's an
supposed-
automated process that comes over from the payroll system.
But they're on the docket.
Yeah.
Normally.
Yeah,
So-
payroll transactions are. It's an automated process and it sends it over there. I have to manually enter the perf payments. That's not an automated process. So anytime you have manual entry, you have room for human error. I'm not perfect. I'll be the first to admit it. I think whether you had reported it or not, it was going to be something they were going to look at the next audit, because we had a conversation about it at the last audit, and that's what they do. And that was the intent behind all of this, is to show that we're trying to do the very best that we can do and clear up anything that any places where we failed over the year. When you do the year-end process, it's kind of your last chance to fix anything, because once you roll that over, you can't touch anything in that prior year. That software is clamped down. You can go back and print a report, but you can't change anything. So it's kind of your last chance to make it right before your audit, and that's what we were attempting to do. I mean, we clearly weren't trying to hide anything. I don't think if we had something to hide, we would have brought you a docket to sign off on, so.
Well, you said yourself it was complicated, and so just sort of slipping it in there, I think, and you did say you kind of wanted to get it over with, so I think I would have appreciated a little more explanation for something that's never happened before, that's new, and that has transactions that are over a year old on it. I mean, I think any one of this council should be questioning that when they see that, but I was a little surprised the clerk couldn't answer us right then very well as well. So I think I feel like there would have been a lot better way to handle it, and I wouldn't have had the problem that I did.
Well,
That's just my opinion.
I mean, by tabling it and waiting until we could explain it, you, in a sense, did handle it. That's why we're here tonight revisiting it. I mean, that's the best way to handle it.
I think the
If you're
public
not
got a lot
prepared to
more
pass it.
information because of this meeting than it would have last meeting, or if I hadn't have said something.
I would have, yeah, I mean, even if I anticipated all the questions, I wouldn't have had time to have this prepared for the last meeting, because I was trying to close out the end of the year so you could have up-to-date fund reports and the department heads could have up-to-date appropriation reports, because it doesn't even recognize this year's budget until you roll that over.
Okay.
So is it, do I think the software is perfect? No. I don't like a lot of things about it, but it's the only tool I have, so I have to, I have to.
I'm
do
just
what I can
curious if
do.
this has gone back because you just now learned to do it. You've been entering this stuff for years, so does it go back, But I don't know if there's anything we can.
Once you've been audited, it doesn't really matter. I mean, in the eyes of the auditors, because, I mean, they audited us and that's in the past. So we can only, well.
There's other people involved here. The taxpayer.
I'm aware of the taxpayers. I can tell you that I didn't grow up in this town, and I have walked into this building and the building across the street for 23 years and treated the taxpayers' money like it was my own. And I don't have any loyalty to this town whatsoever, other than what I have by this being my job. And my coworkers will tell you I'm annoyingly perfectionist at my job. So you can believe when I say that nobody is harder on me when I know I make a mistake than I am, but I own them.
Okay, I appreciate your candor. I'm done
Anybody
with
else?
my questions.
Paige is also here.
Okay.
Is everybody else
Good.
good with me?
Good evening, Paige Sansone with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. So I just want you to know that Baker Tilly did not do an in-depth review of this situation, but I would like to share my observations based on what I know and what I heard tonight. First of all, I do think this is a process issue, and I feel comfortable based on what I heard that process issue is getting addressed. I did look through this APV register and found the normal things that we would see that would not require pre-approval, and in fact, this town does have an ordinance that states pre-approval is not required, and I think you mentioned that, Shane, pre-approval is not required for certain items, which would include those perf payments and things that might incur a penalty, but they do need to show up on the next docket. Okay, so that was the issue here, and the explanation was great from Debbie. I mean, I understood why it wasn't showing up on the next docket, and I could see how you would not notice that or figure that out until perhaps you're doing a year-end closing. So it is unfortunate that you're getting all of these at once, and really the only ones that gave me maybe a pause and a little bit more concern is that $5,000 number, but that's a very small number based on millions of dollars that you spend out in a given year. And it's human error. So, you know, what Baker Tilly could do, if you wanted us to, is to go in and review that process to see if they have developed a plan to correct it. Maybe there's a way to print a monthly reports to see if there are any items that didn't reach the docket. I think this is what I would call due diligence. As Debbie stated, there's things on here that probably doesn't even need to be on this register, but this is due diligence. She found all of these items that did not show up on a previous docket, and it was presented to you. Yes, perhaps there should have been some explanation as to why you're getting all of these, because when I first looked at it, I thought, wow, these are, you know, going back to the beginning of the year, but now I understand what has happened, and again, I do believe that it is a process issue. There were some errors made with entry, but beyond that, there's nothing that gives me great concern as long as the process is fixed. So that's just my observations. I'm happy to take any questions.
I had emailed you and you gave me some questions to ask the clerk's office, because in the email you were like, why are these so old, basically, and I agreed with that. And when I talked to the SBOA, they had the same concerns, and they also had further concerns. I just think I'm going to submit this letter from Todd Caldwell at the SBOA. He's a compliance director. I think the clerk's office should see this, but I would feel better with an independent audit. I would feel better if you checked to see if training's needed, because I like the idea of additional training, and I like the idea of self-reporting when there's a problem, because I would think the SBOA would be glad about that. I don't know, but that's just, to me, when you're on Front Street with somebody, it's better, usually. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I'll submit this for the clerk's office.
Any questions from the public? Debbie's here to answer any concerns or questions, and obviously Paige is willing to do the same. Again, is there any questions from the public? All right, thank you.
They have the 2-year audit scheduled, it looks
Yes.
like in that.
Yeah, they are going to audit us soon on schedule anyway, so I was glad to see that, and they do have the voucher. I gave them a copy of that, so they can check it out, and I feel like I've done my duty as a council member.
Well, I think you and I, during the exit audit, both kind of give them the wide eyes when we were trying to figure out exactly what they wanted. I don't know if that is a way for them to not give us a written reprimand and just say, hey, this is what we're looking at in the future. think we both questioned it's going to show up 4 times on payments, but they sort that out, not us. It's not like we're writing the check 4 times.
People keep referring to the exit interview, but I'm not allowed to because it's privileged information. Have you noticed that? I don't get that, but it's happened more than once. But this town was warned about the issue of payments not being cleared with the council. I'll say that. Put me in jail if you want. By the way, I will say for the record that I would do the social media posts again. I think people deserve to know. And if it's a mistake, mistakes happen, then just say it's a mistake and explain it. That's all. That's what I wanted the whole time. That's what I wanted. So.
Okay, with that being said, I think they owned the mistake several times.
They have now, yes. In public, yes, they have now. And I appreciate that very much.
Question is, do I have a motion to approve that docket? With the explanation that came forward.
Make a motion, we approve claims in the amount of $612,086.17.
Motion been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm a no.
Best and Greg? And I'm an aye, and that is 3-1.
I don't
Discussion
see-
of body cams.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Didn't know if everyone still had their packet with regard to this, because we've brought it up several times. But I do have copies of both the WatchGuard body camera proposal and the GeoBase proposal, which they work hand in hand. And also, if needed, I have a copy of the master agreement that Beth had drafted up and sent to Caleb. It's a 36-page, so I only printed 1 copy if you guys would like to review that. Did you want to look at that, Jamal?
No, we already gone over the agreement, so.
The only difference on this initial page right here is that they reformulated the way all the money is, so it would be able to be submitted for the grant. All the numbers are the same, it's just they did it differently so they could submit it to the state for the grant purposes. So basically, I'm here humbly asking you to fund this, since I cannot fund this through my budget.
Have you submitted this to Paige at all for a recommendation?
No.
We're like this close to our capital improvement plan, but I'm for this stuff, but we're this close. I don't
We
know
were
what the
already
rest
in
of
the
the council.
process of working on this and
You were,
going through the
that's
grant,
true.
so that's why I did not submit it. I did, however, submit a proposal with regards to vehicles.
That's true, right. I agree with you there. Could you refresh my memory about the part that's that requires the fiber between us and the county?
The
That's-
GeoBase part
Yeah,
of that.
that's separate from this, correct? Or is it a part of it?
The GeoBase is by itself. We would like to work on the fiber optic. That is a separate deal, because this can still be updated. It doesn't have to have the fiber link to update the GeoBase. We can still do that manually monthly if we need to.
Okay, it's just not real time.
It's just not real time.
I thought this was broke down into annual payments somewhere.
There was. Like I said, this was redone for the grant purposes. But that is one of the options. There are, I think, quarterly, yearly, you can pay in payments.
Comments from the board? Shane?
I know I'd really like a recommendation from Baker Tilly, but that's just my opinion. I mean, because we're like just a few days away, you know? So that's just my opinion. I'm for it other than that. If you have a better idea, then put it out there. I might change my mind because I am for it, so.
Well, like you said, we have a meeting, so we're this close.
We're this close. I mean,
I appreciate you bringing that back. I know I have mine as far as somewhere with the annual payments. I know this broke down for the grant.
I will bring both copies next time, this one and the breakdown, if you would like that.
You can get Shane and I a copy of the breakdown. It would be very important that we have that with us. Friday, you were invited, so.
Yes, and what I will do is also, I will just confirm pricing, so we're not like, you know, knocked out of the blue or something like that, just to make sure we're still good on pricing on everything. Is that okay?
I think that would be very important.
yeah, that'd be pretty. If we tabled it, it'd be on the next agenda, so it's not hanging out there for very long. Unless there was more discussion.
Well, and the only thing that I'm worried about is I'm not sure what Friday's meeting is. I know that Paige said she was ready, and I don't know.
Okay, do you want to table it until,
I would say you and I can make a decision and put it on the agenda if we're ready for it for our next meeting.
okay,
We'll be able to make that decision at 11:30 on Friday.
and you'll be there, so you'll know what we're saying, so.
Thank you.
Is that acceptable with the council?
Hey, I'm all for it. Less work for me. Woo!
Ward Community Crossings Grant. Dave, do you have someone here with you? Banning? No? It's you.
You're awesome. A big number, I tried to get through it. But our last council meeting, we opened bids for community crossings for this year's road improvement project. And the engineers at Banning and I sat and reviewed all the bids. And I gave each of you a letter there with the Banning letterhead on it. And we recommend that we award the project to Wallace Construction in the amount of $1,338,954.16. That number is a little bit different than what was opened at the bid. The guys at Banning caught a quantities mistake on Wallace's part, so it worked to our favor for a couple $1,000s, I think.
They find something like that, do they call Wallace and say, you made an error? And Wallace says, we're good with that calculations?
Yes. It is, because it goes down. And so by the letter from Banning, it said they were the lowest bidder regardless, and then if that number were reduced even further, then it's not as if they were the third lowest bidder and then did a reduction to become the lowest bidder.
Have you reviewed the bid yourself, or?
I don't go through the bid because I don't understand the specifications and the values and stuff like that. I know that the bid forms were all in order when we opened them up,
Okay.
but the numbers themselves and what is going to be utilized and whether that complies with the specification, I don't know that stuff.
There's nothing legal should check as far as any contract or anything?
Not with this.
Because I haven't seen it.
There will be another contract that we'll go through for this, so.
Oh, okay.
Once we award
Okay.
it to them, then we create the contract.
Okay, and you'll review that? Okay, very good. Okay, that makes more sense to me.
This one? I'm not sure. Did, MVH restricted, anyone in the audience? Debbie? MVH restricted, do we appropriate an amount, would that be in our appropriations also? Mm-hmm. Also, I was looking to see if, yes, but would it be in the appropriations report also? Now, would the appropriated part also be, would that be included in the fund report?
It's its own fund.
Right, but if I look at our MVH restricted, and we have in the appropriation report, we have $180,000 in there. And I look at the fund report, does that dollar amount include that $180,000? Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem?
Yes.
How do you want to address that? Because this is the one thing that we've always talked about when we've thought we've left money on the table.
Right.
In this case here,
You're getting the full plus.
we don't have enough.
Yeah.
We don't have enough, but we can additional appropriate the rest out of that MVH fund. And I think we're probably going to be $40,000 shy.
Is this another thing we could award the bid and talk about it Friday and come back and fund it later?
I think if we award the bid, here's where it is. We can't cut anything out of the bid. We can't
Right.
say we want to go down. If we award the bid, we're obligated to pay for it.
You're committing to the funding of
I see.
that project.
Okay.
Now, the only thing in this here, there was some stormwater work done. Is that correct?
There is, correct.
Leverage.
Can you laser that out of it? I mean, is it broke down in the bid to where you can say this part of it here is on surface water?
Yeah, I'm confident that we can. They
So
do,
you're asking for the total amount so that you can pull that amount from a different
From a
line?
different fund. Is that acceptable?
So long as we're not changing.
We're not changing the bid. No, we're not changing Wallace's bid. We're just changing on if we can afford it or not. But tonight, when we make a decision, that yes, we're going to award this bid, we're set. We've got to do it.
Are you wanting to table it for one meeting till we,
That's up to the council. I mean, have you made any commitments to Wallace? Is there a time frame on the bid that was put in there?
we have to be under contract per NDOT by March 4th.
No, we can't.
we can't, you know.
We can fund it. It may have to come out of street superintendent's salary. But I see a way to do it.
Do it quarterly, though.
It is going to take, and obviously this is going to be a project that will make the final payment sometime in September or November. And we could have, when does MVH come in? Right, but it does come in. Do we have a feel for the year-to-date revenue? Would that be? Monthly, that's 3 months there, or 2 months?
Probably 2 months.
I
$17,600.
want to say it's like 156,000, then we have to separate it out into two different funds. But I don't know, don't get the exact dollar amount. I
think that we were at $390,000 was our MVH, I thought. Is that right? Does that sound vaguely right? MVH fund that came in total before we started dividing it, before we started putting that in there.
If you want to hold this, I can go down to the office. I've got an Excel spreadsheet with all that information in it, and the Wi-Fi is not working in here, so I cannot get access to my desk. You can go get it? Okay.
I think we can fund it.
Do we need to know how much is the stormwater first to be able to carve it out? Or are you saying from
I
MVH?
think letting the bid right now is just saying, yes, we're obligating ourselves that we will pay for it.
Okay,
The question is, do we want to obligate ourselves to pay for it? If we don't do it, we leave $1 million, we kick $1 million back to the state of Indiana.
yeah, I think since we've talked a lot about this, could you clarify that for the public? I know it's got to do with the way the bid is put in with engineering estimates and then the actual estimates that come back. So can you explain why we're talking about this like we are? You did a really good job last time explaining it.
Can't remember what I said.
Yeah, you can. It's the grant, the way the grant works and the match and all of that.
Dave puts half the grant money in his pocket, and we get mad about that. On the community crossings matching grant, the way that is done throughout the state of Indiana is in locations or municipalities that have less than 10,000 people. It is a 75-25 match. So obviously, when we put in our request or our grant application, we try to get our engineers try to get us to that golden number of $1,333,000, which they did a pretty good job at this time. The reason they do that is at that 75-25, the state awards up to $1 million. And that would make our match the $333,000. In the past, our engineering company that we work with they have done a extremely good job on setting our passer scale, figuring out which roads need to be replaced, which roads don't, which need the most attention. And everything that we've put in up to and including this point have been spot on with the state of Indiana. The state of Indiana looks at it and says, we agree, those roads are rated as you see them in the passer scale. There are also roads that do need to be addressed. This time, I don't know whether there's a feel for the cost going up, the product, the labor, or if we feel like we just did that much more. Last year, our bid was $640,000. That put us with, $140,000 worth of liability, or that the town matched. This time, it did come in where we really wanted it to be. We budgeted off of previous years where we thought we would be. The funding is there. We receive for our street department to take care of our streets MVH funding. MVH funding comes from different sources, whether it's the excise tax that we pay, the registration fees, I don't want to say fuel fees because there is a separate fund for that, but it does come from the state and it's not property tax driven. It is another source of revenue. The state of Indiana, again, moving targets, the state of Indiana a few years back came in and said, of that MVH, we want to make sure that at least 50% of it is being spent on the roads directly. We don't want salaries paid out of it. We don't want benefits. We don't even want equipment paid for it. We want to make sure that it is on the roads themselves. And with the Communities Crossing Matching Grant, that always gave us a golden opportunity to say, okay, we put that money back. Prior to the restricted fund, if we go back historically, we have used the edit fund, which is an income tax that the local optional income tax that the county has put in, and we've used it in the past. As revenue sources change, we flow from one fund to the other. It hurt when they said now all of a sudden there's $190,000 that you're spending on your street department that you can no longer spend in that way. Dave has done a wonderful job as far as being efficient on taking care of our streets, but we took $1 million budget and all at once said now there's $190,000 you cannot spend on what you've been spending it for. Because what we had done was we had spent all of the MVH funding on manpower, benefits, equipment maintenance, and items that the restricted fund said you can't use. It got real lean there for a while. We did shift some of our levy out of our general fund into our MVH. We did that again this year. We put some of our levy into the MVH to keep it from spending in the red. This will be fine as far as if we fund it this way. We just know that next year on our Community Crossings Matching Grant, we can't quite be as greedy or as hopeful as what we were this year. We're still looking. I still have not got official word. I've got rumors and promises and everything like that our official census numbers are below 10,000 people. I don't know that we have those exact numbers, but we're hoping that it does stay below the 10,000 because once you exceed 10,000 people, you're at 50-50 match on the grant. And at 50-50, I don't think we can come up with $1 million to match it. That's where we're at. Is that explained well enough?
Yeah. So we're trying to fund the match.
Found the match.
Yeah.
Superintendent pay.
Yeah.
Are there any comments or questions from the public? Go to get that. Do you guys mind if we go to the next item and then just come back to this one? Is that all right? Come back when she comes back?
Okay, sure. Oh, yeah, sure.
Next item on the agenda is discussion with the Community Taxpayer Association. Dr. Moore. Now, I'm going to address you. I promised you at our last meeting I was going to address your questions. It's my dime. Can we talk about the community crossings matching grant? That's a whole lot easier. I went through your questions. Did the council members ask the current RDC appointees if they would like to serve another term? And the answer from me personally is no, I did not. Whether anyone else was asked or asked by any other council members, I cannot speak to that directly. I don't know that. The next item on there was a vacancy open position. Did the RDC announce and post as outlined in item 2? As far as I know, no. At 3, as per 4 or 5, did each, and I'm going to tell you that no, none of them were. Did I make a mistake? Probably, yes. A letter went out, and I'm going to agree with that letter. I'm ready on the one vacancy that we filled, that we replaced someone with. I'm ready to start again. I'm ready for an official do-over. If anyone in this audience wants to know my plead is don't question whether or not I'm going to make a mistake, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to. Don't judge me on that mistake. Judge me on how I try to correct it. And do I see this as an ongoing problem? Yes, because of communications. Because I didn't communicate with a new member, this is what the policy is. Now, all the members on those boards know, on the redevelopment board, every one of them is very intelligent. Every one of them knows the rules of the RDC. You know the rules of the RDC. Every one of them knows it, and I messed up. That's all I can say. A letter was penned and refined and tweaked and sent out to Aaron. I called Aaron the day after our meeting, and I said, Aaron, what would you like to do? And her exact comment were, I'll do whatever the town wants me to do. You want to apply for this position, but I understand at this point in time, if the policy wasn't followed, I want to go into this position, if I would receive it, I want to go into this position on a clean slate. Pretty good of her to do that also. There was another question from the audience. Is this a lifetime appointment? Is this the Supreme Court? And it's not. State gives us ways to do that. Politics change. People change. Who's to say that, heaven forbid, we have an all-Democrat council at the 3 elections from now. Did I say that out loud? I guess I did. But politics do change. We support people that we think share our opinion, whether we say that, whether we want to admit it or not. That's what we do. It's what everybody does. You think you find someone that tends to agree with you, and that's who you gather with. The process and the policy that I made the motion to approve was not followed. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we have a member that willingly says, go ahead and remove me. I want to do the process and I want to do it right. I've had other people contact me and say, I want to get in that process. And we can. We will create a vacancy on that board if Aaron is removed, and we start it per our policy.
Thank you, Tom. You know, everybody on every board will make a mistake from time to time. It happens.
I do it on a regular basis. I do it on a regular basis.
Make that board instead of one person. You need to balance each other out and check each other on things, come back and have a vote. And that's why a vote might be 3-2 or 4-1 or 5-0, because don't always agree. But that's why you have a board, to get a consensus of what the right thing to do is within the parameters of what you've set for yourself. I appreciate that, because we did. We called you on it. The Community Taxpayer Association met, talked about it, called you on it, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to relook at it. In the meantime, there's been some other things come up, and I believe you all have a letter from Virginia, and so we'll just take it from there. Appreciate you following your rules. I don't know if you still want to rewrite your rule. What would be the next concrete step, Tom?
I'm thinking that we abolish the town council and we form a king. Because the best form of government in the world is a king if you got a good king.
You've been watching Putin on TV.
Like I said, if you got a good king. If you got a good king. We're going to battle this one thing at a time. And we're going to do this right, this one, and then if we think we need to, we'll discuss it. If we think we need to tweak it. But not being set in our ways is probably the best thing that you could ask from a council.
So, what's next, Tom, on this appointment?
On this appointment, Shane, you sent a letter, and it basically said we were going to readdress it, but you sent two out.
Yeah.
I agree with the one, because, but I don't agree with the other, because we did vote 5-0 on that one. And I would entertain a motion to do exactly what your letter said, remove Aaron from that position at this time, start the process new.
Okay. Just for the record, I already answered the questions that were asked at the last meeting, so if you want to see what I said, you can go back and watch the previous meeting. I don't need to repeat it. We did send out a letter to both Dustin Stanley and Aaron Beitman-Pipkin stating that, we supported removing both to allow the process for both. The reason I decided to add the second letter was because I didn't feel like the council appointment deserved special treatment. And I wanted to make sure that the process wasn't followed for that council appointment, in my view, as well. So that's just my opinion. It sounds like there's differing opinions on that. But that's the reason I think we should remove both, advertise both positions, and go from there. One other thing I'll say before we make motions on this issue, we're already not following our process already, again, with our park board appointment. About a month ago, the president announced we have a Democratic position for the park board. I checked the website today, and it's not been advertised. So, matter of fact, what is there is simply appointments from 2020. So it's old information. So we're setting ourselves up right now, again, to be accused of not following the policy again. And we've been talking about this, how many meetings? 3? So they get mad at me for being the town's policeman, but sometimes I could use a little help, We haven't advertised it. We've mentioned it. The clerk was here. Everybody was here. It's not on the website. It's been available for over a month. So I think we need to, if we appoint somebody get an application, appoint them, all somebody in the audience has to do is say, well, you didn't advertise that position. And that is the crux of the policy, is to advertise it so the public knows what's going on. And if someone wants, you get better applicants, more applicants. So we've got to do it right for every appointment, not just this one. And I sat back a little bit on that one to see if anybody would catch it, and nobody has. So, do you want a motion now? Or is there other discussion?
On how we're gonna fund the community crossings matching grant?
No, back to the application. I'll do them one at a time, that way I'm not trying to play games with you. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, here's my thought, and you can see if you agree. I would make the motion to remove Aaron Beitman-Pipkin from the redevelopment commission, therefore creating a vacancy, and then advertising that position via the town website, social media, through Friday, March 25th, for a decision to be made by the council at the April 5th meeting. That's about a month from now. And that's the motion. I think that gives enough time to give people to apply, gives everyone the same date, there's no question about it, and it's public, and that starts the process over for that position. Do you agree? If you don't agree on the time frame, I could talk about that, but
Let me ask you this, because, I made the motion, I said that. It says that we're gonna make a list and we're gonna narrow that down. Are we gonna do that at our next meeting, or,
Well-
at the 5th meeting, or are we gonna do that? Because obviously we can't, I guess we could just, I could send it to Jewel, but I can't send it to you guys. So how are we going to, that process, we have not used that process yet, the policy. We've not used it.
right.
So
So I
how
thought,
do you see that playing out there?
I thought 3 weeks, you give a deadline for the application, they get turned in. I think the process refers to they're turned in to the president. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll forward them to the clerk treasurer, and she'll forward them to everyone.
Yeah, and then we can come to the April 5th meeting with our list and discuss, if you want to put the vote off another week, we can do that, but to be discussed at the April 5th meeting.
Okay.
So you can come with your lists and so forth there. Is that, Jewel, do you agree that follows the policy?
Yeah, that's gonna follow the policy. I don't know what RDC's gonna have on their agendas and stuff, but you still have a quorum of 3 at least.
Mm-hmm.
This next meeting.
Motion been made, do I have a second? Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Shane Gregg, 5-0. Or 4-0, sorry.
Now, I'm probably going to be outnumbered on this one, but that's all right. I would make the motion to do the exact same process for Dustin Stanley.
Motion been made, do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. We want to spend $1.3 million. Shane, do you want to spend $1.3 million?
I think we should pave some roads.
Go back to this here. What did you give me here? That's just 1 month, 17,000? We are good to go. As far as the monthly income is 17,000. The current, what you just gave me, is $348,939. We will have to, no, that's a lie. That's not the current. That's both of them then, wasn't it? Was the 34,000 2 months, or was that, okay, never mind. So 17,000, yeah, we'll be all right by the time we pay for it. Now, the question is, do we want him to go ahead in the meantime and carve that out? We will have to, sometime between now and the time that we pay the bill, we will have to additional appropriate because we only appropriated $180,000 in our budgetary system. I don't know where what is it, House Bill 1062 or whatever or 1026 that they're talking about putting a sundown date on food and beverage taxes, but they've thrown that out there in place of doing away with the business personal property tax. I don't know if we want to go ahead and spend the food and beverage where we can or how we want to do that. That is a conversation for a discussion for a later date.
You'll just have to plan it out for the additional appropriation, that you have time for the advertisement and the hearing.
Okay.
There wouldn't have to be additional appropriation if we use food and beverage, and there's money already appropriated, or is there enough in there? We don't know the amount yet, so.
Yeah, I know we'll have to do an additional appropriation, or I think we will, because I really don't think that there's going to be, well, maybe there is. Do you think there's going to be $160,000 worth of stormwater?
Oh, from the fee, $3 fee?
Just in the
Stormwater
construction
fees.
plans itself.
Project.
So in project costs, if there's gonna be that much, because you've only appropriated the 180.
Oh, my
I'm
bad.
getting
I
from-
misheard you.
You've only appropriated
Yeah, right,
180
right.
out of that, and so you would have to do an additional appropriation for the MVH funds.
Right. To make up the difference.
Unless you
Yeah.
cover it in the,
I just misheard what he said.
It's probably going to be close to that, maybe a little more. I'll have to laser it out tomorrow with the engineers. But I think it'll be, I feel pretty confident in saying it'll probably be a little more than that.
And that we have appropriated 300 and some thousand out of food and beverage.
Okay.
So we need that number, but we
Yeah.
can go ahead and approve it. We know that we're solvent. We know that we can pay for it somehow, some way. So we need a motion to tentatively accept the bid pending legal counsel's review of the contract.
Okay, I would make a motion to approve Wallace Construction bid for the community crossing grant with pending legal review.
For, how much
Oh,
was it?
dollar amount is, let me find the sheet. I buried it. It's here it is. $1,338,954.16.
Motion been made. Do I have a second?
Second?
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Shane Dustin, 4-0.
This is a very large project. It's going to touch a lot of people in town, so I will put the scope of everything on our website so people can.
That'd be good.
Thank you.
Mooresville Public Library appointment. I don't think this is actually the appointment. I think this is a conflict of interest, isn't it?
Yes.
Nope, here it is. Okay. Gentlemen, that was in your packet. I think this is a uniform conflict of interest disclosure that is basically saying he will do work for the library, even though we have appointed him to that. I think there are some checks and balances. There's just a question of whether we want to allow that or not. Conversation, Shane?
We do this is common, so for this person, so it looks in order to you, right, Jewel?
yeah, the conflict of interest form is straightforward
Yeah,
from the state.
just discloses it.
Greg? Dustin?
Motion to approve.
Motion been made. Do I have a second? Second. Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Dustin, Greg? 4-0. That's it in for signatures, please. Next item on the agenda is unsafe building ordinance.
So this, I had spoken with Beth Copeland this week, or a little bit ago, about this. This is the 1 and 3 East Main Street, the tornado damaged building. And is Dave still here? Yeah, Dave, can you come up and talk about this for a moment? The contractors, have they scheduled yet?
No. So the owner of 1 and 3 East Main has gone into contract with contractors, but they just won't give us a time. They won't show up. He's, Finmar Properties, they're trying everything they can to get the guy to come into town and take the building down. It's just one excuse after another. So here we are, the building's still standing.
This is the same contractor that dealt with the High Street house that burned and took forever.
Yes.
So we had started the unsafe building ordinance prior to the, some letters went out prior to when the contract was signed by the owner of the building. So first we were told they were going to rebuild it. That didn't happen, and then for various reasons, and then we delayed longer. I'm getting tired of getting complaints about it myself, and it looks bad. So my thought was, I contacted Beth. She just wanted a consensus of the board, because if it does go through the process and a demolition is the ultimate order, it would cost money, and then my understanding is a lien would be placed on the property to reimburse taxpayers for their expense.
Yeah, so the process that you go through with the unsafe building code is you have to provide them the hearing. They go through that process. If you
Right.
get the order and it's order of demolition, you can pay the cost for the demolition. You place a lien on the property to try and get those monies paid back. And there's also the appeal right that the property owner would have connected with that. So there would be
Right.
costs on both sides of that.
There's a legal process to go through, but Beth was concerned. She wanted, in other words, I didn't have the authority to tell her to go ahead with it because it could commit money. So it could, or it could entice the builder, to get going. I'm sorry, not the builder, the demolition crew, to get going. So that's why I brought it up. I think the council needs to do something.
So what's the hearing process? Is that heard before us?
You guys are the hearing, so it's issued, it's here, and then there's a right to appeal. And so the hearing authority, and I'd have to go back through your ordinance, I'm assuming that you guys have designated yourselves as the hearing authority.
I think it's the town judge, Jewel.
Oh, is it the town judge?
Yeah, I think it goes before the
So
town
whenever the
judge.
hearing authority has been named, you have that hearing, and then there's a right to appeal to a county judge. Usually it's a circuit court judge, and I don't know if they'll have concurrent jurisdiction or not. But then that judge will make a determination based upon the evidence that's presented at the initial hearing as to whether or not it is an unsafe building and needs to come down and demolition order is confirmed or not. So there's 2 hearing levels that are available there. Once you go through that process, if you get the demolition order, then you are able to proceed with the tear down of the building.
Who represents us? Would you represent us at that hearing?
Yes.
Is there, and if the judge orders us to tear it down, then it's up to us. We gotta get it tore down.
It's our order, so we're saying we're tearing this down.
Okay.
And that the judge is going to either confirm that decision or deny it. You're saying, and we'll be telling the owner of 1 and 3 East Main Street, your building is an unsafe building. Under our ordinances, we are going to demolish this building. Goes in front of the hearing officer. They'll make a determination as to whether our determination that it's time for that building to come down is proper, and then they have the right to appeal to the circuit court judge if they want. But it is our order of demolition under the Unsafe Building Code.
Do you have any idea how much this would cost to tear down?
There's been a broad range of quotes. Some have been in the 50 to 60, and there's others that are north of $100,000. It's the lower quotes that we're having trouble with.
And getting them to show up.
Yeah.
The other thing that's going on, I think we should be cognizant of this. It's holding our downtown up as far as the neighboring businesses. I'm thinking of 5 East in particular. So they schedule a wedding. They've been trying to work with our department heads. Timing the issue, it's gonna be a mess, and it's gonna be a problem, and they're gonna have to abandon their buildings during this process. So if you think about a wedding plan or a party like that, they're planning in advance. So they're not scheduling, or they're trying to figure out how to schedule. And I really don't think a contractor from Martinsville should be holding our town hostage like that and costing our businesses money. They should be able to do like normal people and schedule and plan ahead. That's my opinion, and I think our department heads should stop coddling them, because we're gonna have to shut the streets down. I mean, that's gonna be we need to be able to give notice to these businesses who are our taxpayers, and we gotta defend them, That's how I view it.
Quit communicating with them, as far as you have quit communicating with them, and Matt and Kevin both communicated with them. I think Kevin, if I'm not mistaken, you had told me that.
I spoke to Dick last Friday with Barry, the contractor, and he said there was some document he was trying to get signed with Tim Aaron, the owner of the building, and he told me to call him on Tuesday for a date. I called Darren first. That document that is supposed to be signed with him has not been signed, so I felt it fruitless. I did not call him today. I was going to see what you guys chose to do this evening, and then you get to call him tomorrow.
That's if we move forward.
Can I defend?
Well, we've issued a demolition permit, correct?
Yes.
And when does it expire?
I don't think there's a expiration date on a demo permit. He obtained a building permit when he first purchased the building, and it expires in April. I'll have to check on the demo permit. It may be 1 year, but I've never ran into this before.
I want to look at the permitting documentation. If the building permit is open until April, then I have a problem moving prior to then. Because then we're saying, we issued you this permit, gave you until this time frame, and then now we're not going to honor that time frame.
Would the demo permit void that permit in any way?
I mean, I will want to look at it. You can get a demo permit or a building permit, and I want to see, I've not dealt with an issue where you have a demo permit and a building permit there, but you can get a demo permit and not demo something. if you come up with another plan to build that meets code, then you don't issue the demo. But I mean, I can get with Dave to take a look at the permitting.
Could we make a motion to move forward on that date or the day after that?
Yeah.
Can we make that motion vaguely
I
here
think-
with,
I think you
just to say
can-
that date?
I think the motion could be that we are cleared to proceed with an unsafe building action at the earliest possible date allowable under the law.
How long will the process take as far as
That's all depends on the
the
courts.
appeals and all that stuff? Just, then you're looking at getting a contractor, and that's just virtually
We're in
impossible.
the same boat, but Dave's gonna need some extra money because we're using his superintendent's pay to pay for the paving.
Sounds like you're gonna get a raise, Dave, but then you're gonna lose it.
Shane, does that make sense to you?
Yes. I think we do what we can we've sat here 2 years.
That'll get 'em.
Try to contact the actual corrective date or just
But did he say why the document hadn't been signed?
Well, the document hasn't been submitted to Darren.
Oh, okay. But I don't know that this is gonna get the contractor off their dead center. I think this is, unless it gives the owner legal recourse on the contractor. I mean, it's not our
And it
bailiwick.
shouldn't be in your consideration
Yeah.
on this, so.
No, but
I didn't get it with a time limit.
well, and that's what I'm saying is the whole, maybe, and Shane alluded to it, and in a normal world, yes. We tell them, hey, we're gonna do this, and they say, I gotta act now. But it doesn't sound like, it sounds like half the team wants to play. The other half doesn't.
They're wasting our department heads' time too. So at some point, I'd like them to hear from an attorney.
Well,
They need to call and schedule it, get it down, period. That's my view.
You'll go with his dates, and you'll plug those dates in. We don't have to name those dates. We say at the earliest date
At
possible.
the earliest date.
Shane, is that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to allow the attorney to move forward with the unsafe building ordinance at the earliest date legally possible for 1 and 3 East Main.
Motion been made. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
You're still up.
I was looking for the agenda.
HVAC.
This is, and I need you, Jeff and I, Dave and I were able to meet with a group from Train Technologies. There they are. Look at him. And Bill Roberson, Dr. Roberson. We talked about looking at the HVAC systems and kind of threw Dave under the bus. Hey, Dave, why don't you come up with what we need, what buildings need what, and everything like that. And Dave wears many hats for the town of Mooresville, but his HVAC hat was at the dry cleaners.
Did very well.
And the best thing about having someone like Dave on here is when Dave feels like he needs help, he says, I need help. And Dr. Roberson brought in a group, and they do things just a little bit different, and I'd like for you to come up and kind of briefly explain so legal counsel understands the way that the bidding process works.
Yeah, so my name is Mark Valley. I'm with Train Technologies. And so I've had the opportunity to work with Dave, talking initially about Town Hall here and some necessary upgrades. And then in the ensuing discussions, what we talked about was that could expand to other town facilities. And then in addition, there was also some discussion that said that consideration of using the ARPA funding that would be attached to that. And so there's some rules attached to the guidance on the ARPA in terms of the use of those funds. And so such things as we want to make sure that we've got proper air changes, indoor air quality elements. These are the considerations that drive a lot of that, those recommendations. And so what we're really talking about would be to come in and do an evaluation, come up with a plan for each of the facilities, and make sure that it meets the ARPA guidance. And then basically, and we would bid the labor out, so we can supply the equipment direct. Think of it like buying direct from the factory. It doesn't go through a contractor. But we would bid the labor and the other installation services. And so we would work with you on that. But each building that we evaluated would have a report. I have a PE on staff that basically would do all the appropriate work. And we've done this with other counties and worked with attorneys and other folks in terms of the guidance. So that's really it. What we did is, this is a letter of commitment or authorization that allows us to do this. And I put together basically just an overview that says these are the kinds of things that we would be looking at. And there's some language that we would use that should an audit ever occur, that these are the kinds of things that they would be looking for. So air quality standards, indoor air quality, efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the thought. If we do this work and for some reason you decide not to do it, there's a small breakaway fee just to compensate me for my energy engineer that would be assigned to it. And I think, Tom, you had asked, how we came up with that. It's basically about 40 hours worth of time for him. That's evaluating the facilities, and that's also walking contractors through and writing up the requirements in terms of what the technical specifications on the equipment and design.
Not that I'm expecting any of this to put all new HVAC in all of our buildings here in the town. Not that I expect any of it to exceed $75,000. Can you explain how we get by the bidding process?
Well, we are in the sense we're bidding the labor out. So what we're using a cooperative procurement agreement that allows us basically, Train has already pre-bid this. It meets the procurement standards for cooperative purchasing. And so Dr. R can talk a little bit about that too if there's questions. It's not uncommon in terms of school and local government to use this. So it's basically what you're doing is you're buying the equipment direct. It's not going through a contractor markup. It's coming direct through from the factory, if you will. But we are bidding all of the labor and the ancillary services around that. That's the guidance in Indiana.
So the equipment, we're going to pay exactly what someone in Angola is going to pay, or someone in Evansville is going to pay for, just like the automobiles that we buy, just like the police
Yeah,
cars.
it's not, schools buy buses this way. You may have bought police cars, other supplies. Schools use it a lot.
The issue that we have with cooperative bidding is I'll want to make sure and take a look at the program that was gone through. So there are certain things that are clearly allowable under the state Sourcewell, things of that nature that have been deemed acceptable upon review. I don't know which process you've gone through. So, we're going to have to make sure that if there's a procurement method. The other thing that gives me a little bit concern on these is we are talking about equipment, and then depending upon the extent of the work that is done, it truly being a public work, right? You are doing improvements to the brick and mortar construction of a building. So depending upon those numbers, that changes a lot of things that we have to look at. How you go out for the bids themselves, instead of just what the procurement for the items that they are, when you talk about public works. And so those are my initial concerns. I would want to take a look at them a lot more to make sure I'm comfortable with those issues. Because the other thing that dovetails on that is, if we're talking about ARPA funds, the guidance that's come out that I've heard from Baker Tilly and all the financial advisors, you want to make sure that you go through all of the proper bidding channels when you're using those federal funds, because that's part of the requirement that they're.
Right, Davis Bacon and other things, so, right.
Does that answer your question?
So is mine. So the specifications for the labor, they bid that out. They get, if I understand this correctly, if we would go with them, they would bid that out. They say, we need furnace number 1, 2, 3, 4 installed into this building, and how much would you guys charge to do that? And 9 guys bid on it, and they can come back and say, the lowest bid on that's $10. Would that meet them doing that legwork for us? Would that meet our bid requirement?
I don't have the answer for
Okay.
that, because the thing that scares me and concerns me about it, one, I need to make sure, because they're saying that they've already procured the equipment, so they've gone through a procurement method for the HVAC units themselves. Where it gets tricky here is, one, we need to make sure that that is a accepted one for the state of Indiana that's allowable. 2, because we're talking about HVAC and making improvements to the buildings themselves, it could be deemed a public works, where you have to add in the cost of the equipment and the labor for the construction. And we can't separate those things out to get outside of the public works statutes.
Oh, well, I fully expect them to be way over $75,000. I was just.
More than 150.
But I was.
This says 7,500, doesn't it?
Well, I'm talking about if we bid the final job to put all new furnaces throughout the 7,500 is if we don't do anything. If they do all the legwork and then we don't move forward with it. Gentlemen, and this was, I'm not expecting any type of a vote or anything like this. This was just a meeting that Dave and I had, and this is unlike anything that we've ever done. I mean, I know that you said you've done it, Dr. Bill. I mean, I know you said you've done it at the schools. So, it is something.
Yeah,
new.
we want you to be comfortable with it, so that's not
You handle all the bids in-house, so we don't see any of them, you
No, that can be public record if you want, so, yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
When it says bid process by invitation, does that mean our local contractors here it'll be a public process that they could apply
You
for?
can choose to make it completely public, or it can be by invitation. And in some cases, there may be experiences that you've had positive experiences, or in some cases that what we run into is contractors that have always bid low in order to try to buy work, but their quality is subpar. It basically just says that you don't have to select them, that we're getting good representative companies, if you will, that can do the work. And the other things, because there's requirements like Davis Bacon, because the money is coming federal flowing down through the Treasury Department, there are some rules about financial requirements those subcontractors need to meet that wouldn't normally occur in Indiana Public Works. So we just make sure that that's covered too.
I guess because it was a new and improved or new to us process, I asked Dave to to put it on the agenda to where we could at least discuss it and see if we even want to move forward as far as having legal counsel say, yes, this is something to look at, or no, I don't agree that we should go in this direction. No offense, but
No.
we have to feel
This is not
comfortable with it.
uncommon, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, we, you know, it's, we want there to be comfort. I can tell you that there's a project I'm doing with the county, a big jail renovation. They hired Ice Miller to review everything that we were talking about. And so, Lisa Lee, if you know Lisa Lee.
Not ARPA funds, though, clearly.
Yeah, the county brought them on board to review the project because they were using ARPA funds. So,
I think he said it's at a jail, renovating
at a jail, yes.
at a jail.
Yes.
There are extreme restrictions on ARPA funds regarding jail projects, so.
Are there any questions for this gentleman, for Dave, or for Dr. Roberson? It is to me, thinking outside the box, do we want to have Jewel review this and come back and say, I'm fully comfortable with this and can recommend this type of strategy, or I think we need to go a different direction?
No, I think that we move forward with sending it or having legal review it and give us his opinion and see if we want to pursue it further.
Ready? Shane? Do you want that in the form of a motion or just the consensus?
I don't need that consensus, is fine.
We're
Because
going
no
to-
obligation.
We're going to let him take a look at this. Dave will be in touch with you. It may be as early as our next meeting, it may be the following meeting.
No problem. And then let us know. I mean, we're certainly willing to meet and sit down and go through it, so.
And are you Mark?
I am. I'll give you my business card.
Dave, do you want to do your department head report?
Thank you.
This one won't cost me. Okay, so I think around the beginning of the year, there's requested of me to go through our traffic study and kind of summarize things that we can do. I think I provided each one of you my summary on that, and I'll try to go through this briefly, and you can stop me if you have questions, but Carlisle and Monroe Street, we formed a committee on this area. We tried to get MPO funding. Unfortunately, we were not awarded the funding for that. We do have a conceptual drawing that was provided by Banning Engineering. It provides a lot of safety mechanisms, new sidewalks. However, the engineer's estimate on that was $1.2 million. We applied for funding through the MPO and we were denied. The next thing, Indiana and Main Street. So that's a problem area that has been going on for quite some time. We have put signs up directing trucks to go south on Monroe Street to High Street. That has helped a lot. I still see an occasional truck come through that area, but not like we used to. We do have a quote from Midwest Engineering to move the pole that's frequently hit. I think it's $62,000. I provided that to you, $62,100 to move that pole about 10 feet back and kind of hide it behind a planter wall there. We can also, and this was recommended by the engineers, do a little striping on the street, directing cars to kind of go around cars that are waiting to turn. They mentioned maybe eliminating some parking spots and reducing. I think Shane, Jeff, and I met up there, and we don't really want to eliminate any parking downtown. That was what the three of us came up with. South Indiana Street, talking about the islands that were put in. I mentioned here that it's a pretty common misconception that the islands eliminated a turn lane. There was never a turn lane on South Indiana Street. We bought right-of-way, enough right-of-way to put those in the middle and move the travel lanes out a little bit. Now, I think if development happens at the end of Moore Street with the R3 zoning, possible apartments there, we might want to revisit that and look at a possible turn lane there. I don't know if that's still in the works, but I know that it was before Plan Commission not too long ago. Northridge Drive on Monroe Street, I've instructed the street department to keep the brush cut back. That's what the traffic engineers, they didn't recommend changing the speed limits, just kind of trim the brush back. And the last thing is Harrison and Jefferson Street. There were not enough accidents there to warrant any multi-stop signs. There's stop going north and south, but it doesn't warrant a four-way stop there per the traffic study. Any questions on that?
On any of this, or?
Pardon?
On any of this, questions on any of this?
Yeah.
Okay, the MPO, it's my understanding, and I think Mark found out about this, Mark Butler at Banning, early February, or?
I think it was early February, we got an email.
Okay, so it's my understanding that that project is still in the pipeline at the MPO, correct?
That's correct. We're going to inquire about it again, reapply. They have not officially taken a vote. However, they stated that our project did not meet the criteria. But you're right, it is still in the pipeline.
He said it was like 3 points shy or something. It was pretty darn close. So I think he was going to get back with the director there, the MPO, and see if there was something else that he could do, engineering wise or something to make the project a little more attractive. So it's not necessarily dead, it's still in the pipeline, and that's kind of how you do this. You get projects in the pipeline for the future. So it'll remain in there is my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where is it, where's that pole actually? If they move it, where would it be? Would it be inside the sidewalk?
Well, it would be more on the back side of the sidewalk. They would shift it back to the south about 10 feet and then over to the back side of the west side of the sidewalk.
Near the flower bed?
Yeah. There's a flower bed there, kind of a 90-degree angle. We would kind of hide it behind the corner of that flower bed.
Still leaves 6 foot.
Yes. Yeah, we would have to do some significant concrete work there too to keep it ADA accessible.
Would you remove the flower bed that's been run over a billion times right there at the light?
I think that would be.
There's like a small.
Yeah, small little flower bed.
It's all crushed and.
Actually an extruded curb there that doesn't make sense to me why it's up like that. We would just make it all flat, smooth transition to the street. I think it was more of a decorative flower bed, why we put up the extruded curb.
It makes the arm longer by 10 feet, correct?
Yes.
The arm that holds the light is longer, so the pole sits further back out of the traffic.
Yeah, we would have to have a new mast arm.
Yeah, from 20 to 30 feet. It's a lot of money, but it should have been done that way to start with. It's my opinion. This says $62,000 to move it, but you get a new pole too.
I can note that price is significantly higher than I had him quoted 2 years ago. I think it jumped $10,000, and that's just due to the cost of aluminum and steel and copper and everything.
Do you still have a skirt for the?
We do. We still have a good skirt that we just didn't put on because we knew that 2 days later it'd be gone.
How much was the skirt? Do you remember?
I think they're either $4,000 or $7,000 each.
I think they're 7.
I was also asked to look at the gateway torch lighting that we have going on. I provided an email from Phil Hartman. Phil works for White's Electrical. I spoke to him quite some time ago. In his email, he's pretty passionate about getting this project done for us. He hates to use COVID, but parts are just still not getting out the door. He really wants to see this through. I know it's been a long time. He did give us some dates. He's getting some of the boxes. They're coming in on March 7th. They're committed to be out the door by that Friday on March the 11th. But there are some fixtures that are still 6 weeks out. I would really like to give him some more time on this. He can't get in there right now anyway, everything, so he can't get equipment up next to the torches. When the torches were first installed and they were working, they were beautiful. I'd like to see that again. Now, there are other options. There's gobo lighting and some other LED light strips that I've looked at. Not real applicable for this scenario. Last thing I want to ask for is more time on this, but I'd like to give him a little bit more time on this, give him at least till the ground dries up, late April. That's my report.
Is he giving you really any kind of dead set time frame? I mean, he talks about he's ordered parts already. This part of the email didn't print off for you guys, but he did state in here that they will receive the boxes. Well, he stated that they will be out the door March 11th. So I should be within a week of that, I would think, coming from about anywhere. So you want to give him a little bit more time to see if he can make the dent in it? I would. I would like to ask to give him some more time. I just think that once he's done, I think it'll be the result that we want. Okay.
Is he ordered the parts to replace what's, or is he updating?
He's replacing what's in there, and he's making them weatherproof. Yeah, the original parts took on water, so he's conscious of that, and he's recognized it, and he's making every attempt to fix it. All right, thank you. Oh, the guardrail at Casey's. Have you?
We're working on that.
Okay.
Still, we've been working with Dave's office, getting additional information and.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. Just a couple of things real quick, just to keep you guys updated. I'm hoping to have our new policies for the department out to you guys hopefully by the end of the week, or not, if not by the first of the week. I've been working with legal counsel, Beth Copeland. We've got a couple of, I think about 2 more policies we gotta get finished up, and then we should be good to go. Other than that, the other thing I'd like to introduce you guys to our new hire. I'm working with the the clerk treasurer after we had our one gentleman resign. They gave me my time frame of getting that replacement done, and we've got that replacement, which is Brandon Purcell. He comes to us from a lateral transfer for about 2 years from another department and come to serve for the town of Mooresville now. Other than that, I have nothing further unless you got any questions.
Are we related? If you sat up here, I think they would think it was me, wouldn't you? Now, welcome.
Way to welcome them on board, Shane.
Yeah. I mean, he looks like my brother.
Kevin, do you? Park.
Couple things. In front of you is Ordinance 1, 2022. This is the non-reverting fund established for the comprehensive plan so that you could fund it and then pay for any improvements later. This is first reading of this ordinance. We've already gotten the information for the appropriation and everything, which I think is next meeting, right? We've advertised for the hearing and everything. So this is just first reading of Ordinance 1, 2022. So
We'll set our second reading for our next meeting.
Yeah.
So we don't need to vote on this.
No, it's just been introduced. Second item that I have for you, we spoke about the bond that needs to take out the ban for the wastewater or the sewer improvement programs. This is an engagement letter for Baker Tilly while they serve as your general advisory. This is specific scope for the bond work for that, so it's got all the appropriate language in it. I would recommend that you enter into that engagement with Baker Tilly for bond services so that we can move forward with getting that taken care of.
What if we just don't want to do it? Or if we don't want to get a bond?
Then we're going to have some issues with the band.
Questions for legal? Motion to enter into the engagement letter, enter into the engagement letter with Baker Tilly to proceed with the bond.
What are the amounts? I don't have a copy of it.
They just provided it to me. It's going to be hourly on that, so
Okay. Is it the same as what they normally charge?
the rates are going to be the same, and it's all going to depend upon how much work they can go through the process. So, yeah, here's the. Your analysis, cost revenues is going to be $15,000. Your general municipal advisory services and securities for the bond is estimated $55,000. And the parity report is $4,500. Then the arbitrage and the continuing disclosure statements are going to be the time and expenses. And then those, depending upon which person works on them, is their different rates. So, but we can't create the bond and to take out the ban without.
I understand. I don't like voting on stuff that I've never seen, even with your recommendation. I've asked for that about a dozen times. It happens every meeting with lots of things, and I don't think it's fair to ask me to vote on a document I haven't even seen.
That's fine, I understand that. It was presented to me today.
I know I'm a pain, but I mean, if you were me, would you want to spend taxpayer money without even having a chance to read it? I don't think that's right.
Motion to table?
Well, you need it tonight, is what you're saying?
This was presented to me today by Baker Tilly. If you want to table it, that's fine, and I'll get you copies for you to read it.
Are you under a time limit, though?
We got to get the bond done by the end of June, I think is what it is, but I don't think 2 weeks will destroy that.
I don't think 2 weeks is going to hurt us at all.
Okay. I'd motion to table, but I don't know if they want to go ahead and approve it.
Motion to table. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Forward that to everyone.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nothing further.
Public comments.
Evening, Council. My name is Braxton Hughes. I've spoken to you guys before regarding the K-9 program. Wasn't here last meeting, but I was able to at least listen. Sorry, I didn't have a stapler, so I had to use binder clips, so you guys get a binder clip. Last meeting, at the end of the meeting, or 2 meetings ago at the end of the meeting, Mr. Cook mentioned that kind of the due diligence with getting the K-9 program funded is making sure we do it right, avoid federal lawsuits. Totally agree. I think that's awesome. I think that's something that everybody on this council should strive for. One of my concerns was at the last meeting, Mr. Stanley said that the information that I provided, didn't use my name, but an email that I sent regarding one of the vendors for the K-9 had a pretty big federal lawsuit against them, and in the last meeting, Mr. Stanley said that information was kind of false information. So I just thought I would give, from the Department of Justice, the lawsuit. It's from the website, not hard to find. So, look, I don't care where they get the K-9 from. I just think when I've sent emails requesting information and knowing where people stand on it, and I don't get much information back. Mr. Williams, Councilman Williams, has been very open and transparent about the whole thing. I had a great conversation with Mr. Worthen this week in which he said, yeah, I am not qualified to make a decision about where a police K-9 comes from, but I support the program and I want it done right. So I think that's huge. So I just wanted to correct that record and make sure that we knew that that wasn't false information that came from the Justice Department. Second off, I think it's important, I think most of the community here would hope that during the next vote for the RDC, that the president of the RDC would recuse himself from the vote. I think after...
Why would you say that?
Because I think after the debacle that everything has been in the past with how this has been handled, I think it's obvious that there is an issue between the president and the person that was removed from the council.
Even if there was, you're asking for him to give up the statutory power that's provided to a council member on the state of Indiana.
Yeah, he's recused himself from that vote before, correct?
That's fine.
Okay, I mean, he set the precedent initially, so now we're moving on saying, oh, well, no, I'm not going to recuse myself from that vote. So that's fine statutorily, like, I get that, but at the same time, like, he's done it once before. I think after how big of a mess this was and how many things were violated and not followed, I think a lot of the community would like that. So that's just me personally. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Dana Heidenreich. I live on North Indiana Street. I just wanted to compliment Mr. Moore on his presentation on the traffic, and I do think moving the signal will be a big thing, but I guess I was a little disappointed. Maybe it's beyond the scope of what he could do, but I was a little disappointed that the timing of the lights, which seemed to be a big issue with the traffic company, the study, that was not addressed, because that is, being in that area, that is what tends to back the traffic up in the afternoon from Indiana Street down to the high school, basically, and I don't know how much it goes this way. But I would like to see, and maybe it gets into too much with the bump outs on the curbs, losing traffic spots and stuff, because it might need turn lanes north and south. But if something could be done with the timing of the lights, I think that would be a benefit as well. Thanks.
The study did recommend that.
Pardon?
The study did recommend that. Yeah. You probably read it.
So going back to Ordinance 1/2022, this ordinance is to create the fund, and we need 2 readings on this, did you say?
Right, because it's an ordinance, and so the other thing you can do is if you want to, you can suspend the rules and go through that whole process, but, I mean, I don't think it's necessary. You don't have anything that needs to get
It's just
started.
that the next week, on the 15th, we'll come in with the appropriation request.
Correct. So they'll take action on this. It'll be created for at the next meeting, and then you can.
There'll be a public hearing next meeting, right? Or
Public hearing on the appropriation.
Motion for approval of payment of claims.
Make a motion, we approve claims in the amount of $520,620.45.
Motion been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm a no. I'm gonna wait until I hear back from Paige after she's had more of a chance to look at it, and also the docket came into my email at 5 p.m. today, and I think I'd like a little more time to review that. My process, I use the docket, I look at it, and if I have questions, I go to the bills, so.
Justin, Greg, 3-1.
Too bad. The reason you were late getting the docket today is because Tammy and I were working on it, going through, being very thorough. It didn't balance against the tape the first time. We ran another tape. We checked every claim against the docket. So, yeah, we were working late, trying to do our due diligence. So that's the reason it was sent out late today.
I'm gonna wait for an independent verification. That's just what I'm gonna do.
Well, I'm just letting you know why you received it late. Because
I understand,
you're still working on it.
but I'm doing my due diligence by not voting for it. Because with all of the missing items on the dockets throughout 2021, I wanna make sure it's corrected, and that's just the way.
Shane, do you have any comments?
Yes, let me find those in my stack.
Shane.
What's that? Yes, I'm getting to it. Okay, here we go. So, Shannon Cole sent me an email. I had this forwarded to everybody, I don't know, a couple days, yesterday maybe, or something. So what she's basically asking for, this is from HWC Engineering regarding our comprehensive plan, and she is wanting to schedule a time for our initial sort of meeting to start the process. She wants 2 members of the council, I think. She wants, if we can get a member of the redevelopment commission and a member of the planning commission, and she has some dates here. So quite a few dates in March. So I wanted to present that, figure out who the council wants to go to this initial meeting, and then who we want to reach out to on the redevelopment and so forth, and if any of these dates work, or if we need to figure out who wants to go and then figure the date later. But I wanted to bring it to the council's attention since the comp plan will involve everybody eventually.
I heard, put me on this. That's what I heard you say.
I'm willing to be a part. You as president.
The only thing that I'm willing to say to that is if the redevelopment board put Dustin on there, that would be, and what we could do is we could actually say you and Dustin, and that puts, don't roll your eyes. We could put you and Dustin on there, and that covers both boards. I mean, that's just up to you. We don't want to have a quorum there. Volunteers?
Can we have more members there?
Do what?
Or?
More redevelopment members or
No,
town council?
no. I'm thinking, trying to think outside the box. What about Mike Dolan from the EDC, or an investor in the town that's trying to build something, or something like that?
I don't think she's opposed to that. She just said I think this is an organization meeting just to start setting out the time to invite those kind of people. But I don't think she's opposed to having Mike come, or she's saying this particular meeting isn't a public meeting. It's just, I think, to lay out the process for us and start getting organized for when it is a public meeting. I don't know that she's opposed to making it a public meeting. If you want that, everybody could come then, invite all the redevelopment and all the planning and all the town council and advertise it. But that's not what she's asking for.
And my recommendation would not be to do it that way.
Okay.
This is the initial meeting just for planning purposes for HWC to make that determination of how to proceed forward. Well, here's a schedule that we're kind of looking at. Does this fit with everybody's purposes? And then who do you want to be invited to the steering committee meetings moving forward?
I'm willing to go.
I'll go to this meeting here, and we'll establish the steering committee, or the members that we, not names, but who we want to be invited, what groups, what schedules, and then we'll work from there.
Okay. Ed, do you have a date in mind then, or do you want?
I will look and see, like you said, I got this yesterday. I noticed it was dated before, but I got this, and I didn't know whether I would be appointed to it or not. So I will send you a text or an email or call you or send a homing pigeon or.
All right, and then I can reach out to other redevelopment members and planning commission, or do you want to discuss who we invite? She specifically mentioned that here, so I was thinking Dave Sadler's the current president of planning, right? So him, maybe?
Tom, if you would like me to go, I'll go.
Well, as the RDC, and then you guys can figure out that kills the two birds with one stone.
I'll figure out how to pawn that off. I mean.
No. Okay, that's what we'll do then. Then when you reach out to Shane, do you want to call Dave?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. And that way the three of you guys can come up with a date.
Okay.
That works.
Anything else?
Yes. So Virginia Perry's letter, I don't know that we addressed that thoroughly when we talked about it earlier. I just want to point out that she has officially withdrawn her application for the redevelopment commission to be considered. And that was done on your own, and I think she asked me to make this letter part of the meeting minutes. Can I just address that, or do I have to make a motion for that?
No, I can give Diana my copy too.
I've passed a copy of it down to everybody. I didn't know if they had gotten it or not, so. But I didn't want to forget that. I slipped my mind earlier, so.
I have a copy of it.
The last thing I have, Villages of Eastmore Lighting. Jewel, are you in contact, still working on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ashley's running with that one, but they've had conversations on trying to get the pricing for it. So.
Okay, and my last final comment, I don't know if you noticed tonight how much of government is process-oriented. When we were talking about the bidding for the HVAC, the town attorney goes into a lot of process, right? You have to follow this, you have to do that, you have to do that. Page left, but she mentioned it's just process. I think process is important, especially when it's other people's money. And when a process isn't followed, I understand mistakes. I understand that. I think there's a way to approach it to where you eliminate, you're above reproach. You eliminate any potential for accusation. And I appreciate what they did today, the clerk's office today. I think they came forward today. I wish they'd done it earlier. They wouldn't have had me to deal with as much. So that's that. As far as my social media, I'm proud of what I do on social media. I don't really think I'm that bad. I view social media as a newspaper. It's no different than me writing an editorial to the paper. And I like the public to be involved. I wanted people to see their answer, and you can decide if you're happy with it or not. That's the way government works, should work. It's your money, your town. So that's why I did what I did. Thank you.
Greg, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Justin?
One thing somewhere, not to circumvent the liaison program, but I called Chief Dalton on a concern that was brought to my attention. Somebody wanted to know what to do with their used diabetic needles. They asked if we had a program. Started kind of diving into that, and it's a lot more complicated, so if Shane or the other liaison doesn't mind, I'd like to work with Chief Dalton to try to find a program that will allow our citizens to walk in and kind of dispose of their needles in a safe and happy way. A lot of pharmacies are punting it off on the fire department. The fire department is charged for the disposal. There's companies that do that, so. So, some do, if they have a company. Some pharmacies don't. So.
The fire department does currently take them, correct? Or do they stop? Huh?
Small amounts.
Yeah, I dropped some off for Rebecca, but I had to go to the back of the fire department. When I first came in, no one was there because they were on a run, you know. So I had to wait till someone was there to let me put them in there. I don't know if that's normal or.
We can take some, but unfortunately, like Councilman Stanley was saying, and yourself, we have to pay for it also. And over the last 3 months, myself and another member found a year's supply of sharps that was just dropped off.
Oh.
And that filled our sharps containers, so we had to basically hire a company to come in and dispose of that problem. We can take a few, it's like maybe a week or something like that. That's fine, but when we have a year's supply, that's getting up to our level. So that's kind of what we were talking about earlier on, we were trying to do something.
Yeah, I have no problem with that if you're wanting my permission.
No, it's just, we have a liaison process in place, and I wanted to.
I think it's an idea worth checking into.
Yeah, when he said the fire department is charged, surely there's somebody out there that will help out, so.
Yeah.
Next thing is, sorry, it just dawned on me. Baby box. We installed a baby box. We have significant donations still to keep that running. However, I'm going to be a little selfish here. If the council would like, I would like to remain even past my term as a point of contact. And if funding starts to dwindle, I will actually self-fund the maintenance fees to keep that program going. So, with council permission, I would like to remain even past my term, as I'm not running, not to point that out, for re-election, to remain a contact for that project.
All I heard was he's going to pay for it.
I will happily, when funds dwindle, either fundraise or self-fund it to make sure that program continues.
Talk him into buying a little asphalt too.
There you go.
He said maintenance fee. No, I'm good.
Next meeting will be March 15th. Let's have it about 6:30 and let's have it here. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Justin Shane, 4-0.
I walk in my garage a lot. Yep. And I've now moved the to be destroyed box right there, so.
Because I'm staying at a hotel tonight, and I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, good call. My license next to me going,
So this guy could not have said anything else to make me find any reason to say no. That's fine. That's fine. Do you know Lisa Lee? Don't try and big time me.
Big time.
He was trying to big time me. Lisa Lee, what I smell? Yeah, we're 2 times the size of I smell.
That's kind of laugh.
In our founder was president and Supreme Court Justice.